really start this process and to make sure that we have an introduction.
What we'll do is we'll have the members of the steering committee introduce themselves, and then I'm going to turn it over to the team to talk about several things today, and I'll go over that in just a second, but maybe we'll start with the team members, or the steering committee members.
Okay, Larry Pasenka.
Thank you, Larry.
Brian Fry, Wichita City Council.
Sean Henning, Director of Finance, City of Wichita.
Good afternoon, I'm Becky Tuttle. I'm not on the steering committee, but I'm on City Council, just here to listen and learn.
Andrew Nave with the Greater Wichita Partnership.
Don Sherman, Evergy.
Alan King, Director of Public Works and Utilities, City.
Just
Just.
So today we're going to go through several things that we had promised we'd bring back. Talk a little bit about how we're trying to enhance the public communications part of this process. Talk some about the use of contractors from the area in the project, and especially how we're going to try to increase the capacity of disadvantaged businesses in the community so that they can be competitive as they work through the project. Also talk a little bit more about optimization. And then there's going to be a wrap-up about next steps. And Alan King's going to talk some about that. I'm also going to ask the team to give everybody an update of where we are on the guaranteed maximum price, which was unveiled 2 weeks ago. So with that, I think I turn it over to Ron Coker.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. My name's Ron Coker. I'm with Burns & Mac. If you were here a couple of weeks ago, you heard from me then as well. So I'm glad to be back. I've got a few people I'd like to introduce very quickly before we get going because they might jump in this presentation. Megan Jansen with Burns McDonnell. I think Megan just stepped out. She was having a coughing fit, I believe. Megan's going to lead our communications efforts. Shay Blevins with Gredeman Group. Shay's going to talk to us about social media and some of the website stuff we're doing. Christina Long, CML, I saw her sneak in the back. She is a member of our communications group as well. Michelle Word is in the back, I believe, or was just here. Michelle Word is our Director of Supplier Diversity at Burns McDonnell, and really help us develop a lot of the programs we're going to talk about today. Dr. Fred McKinnon is a professor at Quinnipiac. I'll let Dr. Fred introduce himself when he gets up. John Webster with Dubois Consulting is one of our design partners, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the educational components of the program today. Mark Lamar with Burns McDonnell is part of our project controls team. He's going to talk to you a little bit about how to connect your BIM model that you saw last week with other elements of technology to make sure that you're getting a better and a project that's well informed both at the staff level and at the design builder level. And then Tracy Streeter with Burns & Mac. Tracy's the former head of the Kansas Water Office. He's going to talk a little bit about operator training as we go forward. And then I know Katie Miller is here with KMU. Katie may not jump in the presentation, but Katie also does operator training for KMU, or Kansas Municipal Utility Group, so she's welcome to jump in as well. So with that, I know that was a long introduction. Sorry about that. We'll try and make the presentation go faster than the introductions. As we talked about last time, we talked about the experience of the team, and that was really the first time we had presented to the group, so we wanted to give you a little background on our experience. This is a world-class design and construction team that do projects like this really all over the country. And it's also blended with a great local team, really fantastic design and construction partners that are based here in Wichita that can help deliver this project. And economic development is part of every dollar that you invest in your infrastructure. So the more we can do that with local firms and with local partners and local companies, the more turn or cycle you have of that investment inside your community. We also walked through the design. Eric Berggren walked you through our BIM model, which is the best way to see the design at this stage. It is a big project for sure. I hope you took that away. That model will develop and become more complex as we go through design and construction. We'll talk about how we can use that in other ways today. And then we talked about delivering the project on budget. And we did say last week that we will deliver the project. Our price is actually due on Monday. And it will be below your budgeted number. And we talked about some opportunities the city was still evaluating from a savings standpoint that might even have some additional benefit for you. So I don't plan on talking about those things again today unless you all have questions. I'm happy to go back through any of those. Instead today, I thought we'd talk about the opportunities going forward. So anytime you make a $500 million investment in your infrastructure program, it creates opportunities. And when that investment is of long enough duration and far enough out, it creates opportunities in addition to just the economic development aspects of it and the investment aspects of it, but it creates opportunities to plan and to integrate things that are beneficial to the city and the community in ways that sometimes you don't have the chance to do on very fast projects or projects that don't have enough scale to do that. So we're going to talk about 4 areas today that I think there are fantastic opportunities related to this project, and we'll talk a little bit about what those might look like as we go forward. They will all develop in more detail as we move and progress the project and the project transitions to the next phase of the project. So they're just starting points in the discussion, but I think they'll give you some good ideas, and hopefully they'll spur some thought on your part as to what other things could we do with this project to better position the city as we go. The first is communications. So a project like this certainly has a lot of attention in the community right now. We want to think about how do we communicate in new and better ways to the ratepayers and the citizens of Wichita throughout the project as the project progresses phase to phase, so that they can have the confidence that their dollars are being invested wisely and that the city's getting good return and good value on those projects. Likewise, we'll talk about technology and the ability to integrate technology into the project now, so that I know one of the big initiatives with Wichita Utilities is asset management and thinking about the long-term optimization of how they operate the utility. On a project like this, now's the time to be thinking about that. How do we integrate technology in so that it feeds those initiatives within the utility, and the utility's better positioned at the end of the project. We're going to talk about supplier network, building your supplier network out broader now, and then building those businesses within it to make them stronger businesses. And finally, this project creates a great opportunity, since you're building a next generation plant, to build a next generation workforce to go along with that plant. And we'll talk about some of the needs in those kinds of things, not just in Wichita, but throughout the state and around the country. All right, so first, I'm going to let Megan talk to us a little bit about the communications efforts.
All right, thanks, Ron. Well, as Ron mentioned earlier, we do have several team members here today, and we're very excited to have both Greteman Group and CML Collective as part of our communications and outreach team for the project. Greteman Group, in particular, their help with communicating externally and thinking about how we talk about things in very relatable, understandable ways as this project moves forward. And CML Collective, amongst their many talents, brings a great specialization and understanding of the business community. So we'll be looking for them and their expertise in that piece in particular. As we think about our approach to communications and bringing kind of lessons learned from other projects that we've worked on and drawing on that deep local expertise, there's a couple of things that are core to our approach. And the first is taking a very comprehensive look at how we're communicating with people and what kinds of tools we're using and how we're getting that information out there. Also making sure that it's very streamlined and that we've got a high level of transparency. And for that reason, we will be using a variety of different tools to reach folks depending on where we are in the project and what kind of information we're looking to communicate. A couple that you may note on here, there is a WichitaWaterworks.com website that'll be coming online shortly, and Shay's going to talk about more of that in a moment. And then another item that we have on here that I want to call your attention to, as we're being comprehensive, we will also be adding a project hotline here in the very near future. And what that means to us is a dedicated phone line that's monitored in nearly real time, where we can log those calls, we can document them, and we can provide the project with a face and folks, a real life person to talk to. And while a lot of people will communicate now through social media and email, what we have found when we've surveyed the public following some of our other major initiatives, similar in size to this, they really like having that phone number and being able to reach someone. So that will be a key piece of our strategy. But above all, making sure that we are just being proactive and letting folks know whether it's about opportunities or impacts, and then being responsive when we do get those questions. I don't know, Ron, did you want to expand on?
Well, I did. I'll just, so this concept of having someone like Megan who's done this on large capital projects, on streetcar, most recently in Kansas City, and even just came off the airport project in Kansas City, which which might be more high profile and interesting in the papers in Kansas City than your project here has been even this past few years. So that experience in understanding big projects and how to communicate, blended with the expertise of Greteman and Christina in understanding the community and how to make that work. With respect to the hotline and the call tracking efforts in particular, this is an example from the Clean Water Program in Shreveport that Burns McDonnell manages. This initiative on Hotline is actually conducted by one of our local communications partners there. They monitor the hotline. They use a program called Zoho CRM to log in calls and log in information so that we can track those calls and make sure that everybody gets a response related to their questions and their initiatives. And then our technology group can extract that information into dashboards so that everybody can easily see what kind of questions we are, how we're doing with response time, and what the issues are. And you can even do things geospatially, like start to heat map. Where are those questions coming from? Is there a reason that question's coming from there? This project, or this program's a little different than yours. This is spread across the whole city. So when you have contractors working across the whole city, you have pockets of questions or needs related to the program. On your project, a lot of the work's going to be confined to the project site, but we think that's still important because it's a big project and it's going to generate a lot of questions from the community. So we always want to create an avenue where we can answer those questions effectively and efficiently and spread that information as we go forward.
Yeah, and I would just add that the other benefit to the city is at the end of this project, not only the hotlines, but any other inquiries or comments we've received, you'll have a complete database of that information, and it becomes really valuable as you look to other large infrastructure projects, being able to use that as a baseline and really understanding what's important to the folks in your community. And I think with that, Shay, do you want to talk about social media?
We are going to create social media channels specifically for this project. Like a hotline, they are a way for the community to come directly to us and have those questions answered, voice their questions, voice their opinions. And we will have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram activated, mostly because those are very active channels in the city of Wichita. We have a very large community on Facebook. Twitter is a great place to post updates, especially for what's going on at the project and with each other. And Instagram is a very visual platform that's going to give us that behind-the-scenes look at what's going on at the project. All of those social media sites will also lead back to the project website, which is going to give you a one-stop shop for all of the information that you could need about the project. And like Megan said, it will be online shortly, so you're going to see, the team members. They're going to have FAQ section, newsroom updates, and a way to reach out to the team, not through social media, but through form submissions.
Awesome.
Shay, and I think just two more quick features on that website. Yep. Through the contact tab, which is kind of small, once this is live, there will be a place for interested businesses, individuals who are interested in opportunities, or if they just want to sign up for general project updates, we'll go ahead and start collecting that information now. That way, as the time comes and more pieces are available, we can communicate that out. I would also point out that this website is being developed in coordination with the city and city communications. So there is some information that will absolutely continue to live on wichita.gov on the dedicated page there. And then this will give us a platform to talk more about those project-specific kind of nuts and bolts pieces as we go forward.
Yeah. Any questions related to communications before we talk about the next subject?
You reference it's available soon. When?
Yes.
Is it a week? Is it a month?
Probably about a week. Yes, we'll put out an announcement.
Perfect.
Other questions?
So you can't buy the domain.
Dang it, Ron!
Wow.
Okay, let's talk about, I'll invite Dr. Fred up and we'll talk about supplier diversity as well. And even though it is Dr. Fred McKinney, he does affectionately go by Dr. Fred. So feel free to call him that. Dr. Fred, do you want to give just a little bit about your background before we jump in?
Well, first I have to say that I'm so close to the Arkansas River that I can't resist the opportunity to tell you that I was born downriver in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So, but I flew in from Connecticut. I'm on the faculty at Quinnipiac University. You probably know about our school because of the poll. But I'm on the faculty. I'm the People's United Bank Director for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and also the Carl Highsmith Chair for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. But prior to that, my connection to Burns and Mack is long-term. I've been working with Burns and Mack for over the last 5 years. First, because Burns and Mack has supported diverse businesses to attend a program that I directed at the Dartmouth Tuck School of Business for 4 years. And so when I was with Tuck, Burns and Mack supported suppliers to come to Tuck for our executive strategy retreats. And then we had the bright idea with Michelle, who's here, to introduce a Tuck KC program. So we took the Tuck program, instead of sending people to New Hampshire, we brought the professors to Kansas City, and we worked with the local business community in a training program. So this is really sort of an extension and a continuation of what we've done at Dartmouth, but also what we've done in Kansas City, we want to do in Wichita, which is to build capacity. So our program, I think, is unique because of its focus on developing business entrepreneurs specifically in areas of strategy. As we found in our research and our work that it was really strategy that made the difference between successful diverse businesses and those that struggled. So we think that there is an important opportunity here with this project to build that capacity here in Wichita. We also firmly believe that it's not a zero-sum game. So we think that developing the diverse business community is also just good for the general business community and the citizens of Wichita. So in terms of what I would be doing with Burns and Mack is we would be developing some programs here for local companies to help them really take full advantage of this tremendous opportunity that not only will get them work on this project, and perhaps most importantly, will allow them to be here for the future and of Wichita.
Yeah, so last presentation we talked about these kind of 3 key things related to supplier diversity. One, the goals associated with the project. There's a 70% local goal on the project. We've elevated that. We have an internal goal of 85%, which we're trying to accomplish in keeping business local here to Wichita. And there's a 7% emerging business goal related to the project as well. There are 11 local companies currently represented on our team, and the most important thing to know about that is that list will grow. Just in the first phase of this project related to the pricing, the preliminary design and pricing, we've had contact with over 200 local and regional contractors and suppliers to support those initiatives. So this big local team will grow and develop as the project moves forward in phases. Really 3 key areas, I think, to pay attention to as it relates to how do you expand supplier base in what you're doing. One is making sure that you're looking at the project and you're breaking the project into work packages that fit the contractors and both first and second tier contractors that are here in Wichita. And when I say first and second tier, I'm really talking prime contractors and subcontractors. So we don't just want to look at the large construction companies. We want to look at smaller construction companies. We want to look at electrical or mechanical construction companies. We want to look at emerging construction companies or disadvantaged construction companies, suppliers and design firms as we go forward. So everything will be provided free of charge. We'll use a request for proposals process. The reason we do that is so that you're not just focused on price, you're really focused on overall value for each package and each supplier and contractor that's part of the program. Bonding capacity is a really large problem, particularly with emerging and disadvantaged businesses, and having that bonding capacity. So rather than requiring bonding on the project, we use what we call a subcontractor default insurance program. So it's really insurance on each contractor, each project. If you've ever had a contractor have a problem and have to try and access a bonding company, you know it's not an easy process. It can take months or years to try and rectify that situation. This gives you much more protection as the city and our team in constructing the project. It also, because there's a pre-qualification process, it allows us then to better match work packages to contractors so that we're not giving a work package to a contractor that's going to be too big for them to achieve as we go forward. Doesn't mean we don't want to stretch them and we don't want them to grow. just means we don't want to push them so far that we push them to the point where they cannot be successful. So making sure that we prioritize for the success is key. The other biggest struggle, and I think Dr. Fred would say this as well, is cash flow in a lot of emerging and disadvantaged businesses as they try and ramp up to scale. The first two bullets here are really just Kansas law as it relates to how you pay your contractors. So we'll certainly comply with Kansas law, but I think we'll go a step beyond that, in particular for emerging and disadvantaged businesses where they can't still wait 30 or 35 days for cash flow to flow through. So we have a variety of programs that we utilize, some even to the point of paying weekly to those contractors. That doesn't mean the city's paying us weekly, and that doesn't mean we're asking to be paid weekly, but it means that we recognize that some of our partners may need that cash flow, so we will go ahead and prepay them or pay them as their work is done rather than have them in cycle waiting for payment. So all key elements. Dr. Fred, you want to add anything to that?
I wanted to chime in on the program that Ron has described really is a best practice across the country, and I've worked on projects across the country, large public and private projects, where these elements are really critical to the success, not only of the project, but the success of the project, integrating the smaller and diverse business community into the project. All of these programs have a reason, so the quick pay addresses the whole cash flow management problem. It's not a management problem, it's just a cash flow problem that small businesses face on large contracts. The difference between sort of the disconnect between when money's coming in and when money's going out. The bonding issue has been a long-term issue in the small business community for a number of years, and that constraint has restricted their access to a lot of programs. The contract size is also a major problem. It's an institutional constraint to having opportunities for smaller businesses. You can literally design the small and diverse business out of a project simply because of how you design the work in that project. And so Burns and Mac really has addressed those three important and critical aspects of making these types of major projects work for the local business community.
So Dr. Fred, don't leave. So this next element, Dr. Fred just talked about, which is the educational outreach program. This is actually pictures from our educational outreach program that Dr. Fred mentioned. This was done in conjunction with Evergy, DST, Sprint, and Hallmark. Michelle, did I mess any of those up? And the City of Kansas City's diversity supplier group. So these are the 30 diverse business CEOs that went through the program as part of it. So you want to chat just a little bit about this?
And this is different from just a training program where you take entrepreneurs and business owners through how do you set up an accounting system or how do you do a website. The focus of this intervention really is on the strategic success of the business. A lot of business owners are in business, and some of them maybe have even gotten into the business for the wrong reasons, or they're not thinking long term. And so this is an effort, this program is an effort to get the business owners to step back and say, okay, ask some very simple but important questions like, what business are you in? And it's amazing what you hear when you ask that question. And then you go through an analysis and they learn that they're not in that business. And so we take them through that exercise that only they can confront after they have looked at the situation. I'll give you just a quick anecdote. I was recently watching this movie that I recommended highly. It's called The Founder. It's about how McDonald's was founded. And the aha moment for the founder of McDonald's was when he sat down with a business specialist, a professional, and he asked him that question, what business are you in? And he said, well, I'm in the hamburger business. He said, no, you're not. You're in the real estate business. And that is sort of what can happen when you bring entrepreneurs through a real program that helps them understand all of these strategic aspects of their business.
Yeah, good too. This is not just, these aren't just construction-related companies that went through this program, which I think is a key because it's really about building businesses across all sectors within your community. So by having other partners in the community partner with us on this program, you really get a nice diverse mix of companies that are design, construction, software, other elements, accounting, other elements of business that helps them all build and make connections across their business as well. So we're going to start this program here in Wichita. Our first program will be spring of 2020. We expect to have a program every year throughout the duration of this project. The focus of those programs will shift or change each time that we go through them. Sometimes we want the same group to come back more than once. Sometimes we want to spread it and look at new groups and tackle different things. But it's really about bringing Ivy League education right here to Wichita for folks that can't step away from their business to participate. For a select few, we're going to also offer scholarships for those that can attend the Dartmouth Tuck School of Business program. We're going to provide scholarships to those folks as well. John Webster was our first scholarship recipient. I told you the last time I was here, we've actually given out 7 scholarships to go to Tuck, 2 of which are businesses that are listed on your emerging business list. John was one of those businesses, and he was our first scholarship recipient. So John, just real quickly about the program and what it meant for your business.
First of all, we have been in business now for 31 years. And having been in business by that time, about 26 years, I knew I hadn't figured it out. And so it's very important Dr. Fred talked about the question of strategy. Burns McDonald and Michelle and Ron sent us to Tuck. I just want to say this. In addition to going there and learning about strategy, in addition to going there and learning how to be a better business partner, we were able to double the size of our firm. In fact, in the last 5 years, we've done more than $3.6 million of business with Burns McDonald. Why is that important? Because we're able to hire people locally. We're able to build our staffing capacity. That's really what an opportunity like this is all about. When it's over with, are the businesses larger, are they stronger, and has it impacted the entire community? This is really a winner, and I think this is a great opportunity to be brought to Wichita for the Wichita business.
Yeah, and I might add too, lots of discussion about Burns & Mac here. That's really just because we're using Burns & Mac's platform and programs on supplier diversity to springboard off of. These are all Wichita Water partners, and these are all the firms that are part of this team and this partnership that will help deliver and promote these programs. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about technology. Any questions on supplier diversity before we go past that subject? Yes, sir.
You talked about the paying weekly for some of the cash flow.
Right.
Do you still maintain or hold some sort of retainage on those, or is that covered under the diversity in this insurance program for getting it worked out?
Right. Yeah. So really, it can be either is the answer as you go forward. The default insurance program is really geared towards a failure of the contract or any potential failure of the contract. The reality, I think, is when you're looking at each firm, we try and mirror that to the needs of the firm and the criticality of what the firm is delivering as part of it, to make sure that obviously we don't want to pay so far in advance that we can't get the work completed, right? So it's not necessarily about paying ahead. It's more about paying as we're going. So we're keeping a close eye on those firms as we go forward. And retainage, I don't think we've stepped far enough to think about retainage related to those contracts specifically here in Wichita yet, but certainly is something to consider as you go forward. Yes, sir.
What's your definition of emergent?
Emerging businesses? Well, it's actually it's the City of Wichita's emerging business program, and the companies that participate as part of that program. We've looked at that program list, and one of the things I think that we'll want to explore as we go through is, for instance, when you look at construction companies on the emerging business program directory, a lot of those construction companies are focused on residential construction or residential related construction. So I think there's an opportunity to try and build more commercial construction as we go forward. We most likely will look outside of that list as well at the state of Kansas's certified disadvantaged business list to identify companies in the local and the regional area that can participate as part of the program as well.
Ron, the educational outreach program in Duncan McKinney sounds like a wonderful tool for our businesses to grow in this community. I would assume, though, tied back to the supplier base as it relates to the subcontractor default insurance program, you talked about a pre-qualification process. Is it fair to assume that pre-qualification training or that process, or maybe it's not very arduous, but that'll be part of that program, that businesses that are wanting to utilize that insurance program will get in through that system?
Yeah, well, there's really parallel paths here.
Okay.
A lot of what we're talking about with Dr. Fred isn't specific to the project.
Okay.
It's more related to building businesses within the community and making sure those businesses are strong and developing and capable of growing here in Wichita. That's, the philosophy I always talk about is you want your businesses here in Wichita to be strong because you want them to be able to go to other communities and be successful and bring those projects back to Wichita, right? Or to bring those revenues and profits back to Wichita as part of it. So that's one path that we're going on. When we're talking about the insurance program that you're speaking of, that's really a different path, which is focusing on suppliers directly working on this project. So yes, there would definitely be education around that. The pre-qualification is really just a process to understand where that contractor is in development and what the needs of that contractor are going to be, so that we can really tailor opportunities more specifically to those individual contractors.
Perfect. As long as that's communicated, I think the educational
Absolutely.
program's outstanding, but that our businesses have an opportunity to know what that pre-qualification is.
That's right.
Perfect.
That's right. Other questions? Okay. Oops. Let's talk about technology for just a second. So we showed you this is our BIM model, or our project design that we showed you last week of the new facility. So we're not going to go back through the individual details of this, but oops. Are you flipping over?
Flipping over. Is that all right?
Yep. Absolutely. Well, actually, before you flip over, let's talk about a few slides right here. So yeah, just put that back on slideshow. So when we think about technology, and I said earlier that asset management's a key thing, a key element that the city's focused on developing as part of their utility optimization program. When you have a project like this, and when you're planning, you really want to build off of that. So we want to make sure that all the assets of this new facility are identified and integrated into the city's asset management program. We want to, where we can, set up predefined maintenance schedules on this equipment. So that you're not looking at hard copy owner's manuals or maintenance manuals associated with each individual piece of equipment, but that information is fed into your system, and your system is prompting you when you should be looking at those things to adequately maintain them and really defer problems on the maintenance side. So this will all feed into the program. There's also a lot of opportunity here for equipment that is censored or monitored to now talk directly to your Lucity asset management system, so that if, for an example, runtime on a pump or a motor is an element that's being tracked through sensors, we can now feed that into the asset management system, and the maintenance of that can be tracked based on the use of that individual piece of equipment. So those are all opportunities. Also a great opportunity to take your BIM model and then use it for future planning and future design projects that you might have in the facility. Remember, your current water plant's 80 years old. If we're successful in developing this project for future generations as well, you have a long period of time to utilize this plant and really make the plant operate for changing needs, changing regulations, growth in the community. So having those tools to really plan and design the future needs of the project are going to be, I think, something that's very valuable to the city. So now let's flip over, Mark, and talk about the BIM model connection. So one of the things that we want to do with respect to the BIM model is really on the forefront of what's being done in building information related tools, which is, let's don't just have a BIM model for design, let's connect that to schedule and budget so that we can start to look at all aspects of the project in a single location. So Mark, I'm going to let you go through this. Mark is from our program controls group. His specialty is working on large capital programs and what we call program controls, so budget, schedule, progress, earned value related to that. He's done that in large utility programs in Southern California and the Northeast. So this is a program that we use by the name of Reconstruct. That's the brand name of the program, right?
Right. As a guy in project controls, I do a lot of scheduling, and one of my biggest challenges is communicating a nice schedule to either the project team or anybody that wants to look at the project. It's not very visual. It's a lot of lines, and you have your Gantt chart and you have some dates. It's not easy to visualize a project. So what Burns is using is Reconstruct, And you can think of it as a visual command center. It's reality capture and design and schedule all in one. So this is the old way of doing things. Tracking installed work the old-fashioned way. You have papers, you have highlighters. You track what's been done, what's coming up next. Time-consuming, difficult to verify. That's the old way. So here's the new way. This is Reconstruct. Reconstruct takes your project scheduling software, whether it be Microsoft Project or P6, goes right into Reconstruct, your drawings and models, which are your BIM 3D model, goes right in, and then your reality capture. We use drones, we use 3D cameras, and other imagery goes right into Reconstruct. And it produces everything all at once. You weave everything together. You have your image up here, your schedule here, and the schedule is tied into the BIM model, which then you can see visually in the screen up top.
Mark, I think maybe just run it from there. That way you're on the microphone and those that are watching on TV can hear you a little better.
So, it also goes to anybody in the field. We use an app here that goes to any person that's in the field, their phone. So what happens is they can verify what's been done, and that goes back into Reconstruct, which updates your BIM model and your scheduling software. So now your 3D timetable is visual and actionable. So this is a good example here. You can see that, sorry, I keep walking away. Our schedule here has been delayed, and it shows visually up top which part has been delayed because it's linked into our BIM model now. We see what's on schedule. We also see what's coming up also. So there's a timetable below there where you can drag across. You can see what has happened over the project, what's going to happen over the project, and where you're at right now.
Yeah, so good point for me to say this is not a Burns and Mac or a Wichita Water Partner project that is delayed. This is simply an example project to visualize what the capability of the software is.
So once the shell of the building's up, and we can't send drones up to make a point cloud anymore, we use 3D cameras inside the structure here. And it's the same concept. You walk through with imagery. It's a 3D camera, and it laces it in with the BIM model. So you can overlay the BIM model and see what's been done and what should have been done.
And don't let the person's hand draw your eye. Look beyond their hand and you can really see.
As opposed to Halloween, that's just for effect.
Yeah.
And this is cycle. We have master schedule here, which feeds the site execution plan on a weekly basis. You create a look ahead, review and distribute tasks, report progress on tasks, summarize that progress activity level, and back into the master schedule where you can do your earned value reports, replan, and the master schedule is updated, and it continues again in that cycle. If you look at the visual image down below, you'll see that you can see what part of the building is on time, what's coming up next if something's been delayed, and what hasn't started. And that's color-coded image, so you can visually see what is going on in the schedule. Here's a dashboard report. Similar to most projects that you've seen, this is all in one look, comes right from Reconstruct. You can see your projected percent plan complete, your next week, and your last week. You can click on one of those, and you can focus on, this one is next week in particular, your dashboard to the right here, gives you all your metrics. This is your cost-loaded physical progress. So you can see the progress, you can see your cost risk on the right there. If you're on budget, below budget, or over budget, it's going to tell you right away. And that's all calculated through CPI, which is through Primavera, which is, of course, connected to Reconstruct. A handy little tool here is when you overlay the BIM to the actual image that's been captured, the 3D camera inside, you can see where something should be and where it is in reality.
Yeah, so as an example, here's where this pipe was in the BIM model. In reality, it's laying outside of where it showed as being located in the BIM model. So now you can reconcile that difference and find out what's changed.
So you can highlight that area, take a screen capture, and send it directly into the field. On the right, you'll see this is a measurement. It can take volume. It takes a point cloud from the drones, and you can take measurements from it. So you can get your volume, surface areas, height. Safety. So with this, you have your trades, and they've been color-coded, and they've been implemented into the schedule, which feeds back into Reconstruct. So you can see in the BIM model where each particular trade is at a certain point in time. And how this works with safety is, let's say you were hanging steel in yellow, and you had an electrician working on the floor below you. You can see right away and identify that that isn't a safe working condition. You can go ahead and change your schedule to alternate floors, whatever you have to do to make that safe. It also allows a lot more eyes on the project. So if you were to see something that didn't quite match up, in this case maybe some scaffolding needed to be modified, you can take a screen capture of the image, send it out to somebody in the field, safety representative, and he can go ahead and modify that. And you, up in the right hand here, you can see that he's actually sent what is supposed to be done and the modification that needs to be made right here.
Mark, is that your last slide of that? Oh, sorry, you got a few more.
Couple more. Benefits, you're going to come in ahead of schedule, non-scope change orders, 30% less effort, savings in time and travel costs. Obviously, you can see the advantage with people not having to be on site anymore. You can do everything from the software. You don't have to show up and look around. You can see it right here. And again, percent plan complete, 70%.
These are just customer examples, right?
Right. So you see the benefit on the right-hand side.
So these were all just examples of those projects. Although some of those construction sites look pretty big, they will pale in comparison to the size of this construction site. You'll have at least 2 tower cranes out on that site, maybe 3 tower cranes as you're constructing the site. What we'll show you now is some of what this looks like in actual practice. So this is an active construction project. This is the drone flight from the project, looking at a new facility here. Up on the top right, the BIM model is laid into that facility as well. We're going to use HODNet photography, which is on your emerging business list here in Wichita, to do the drone flights. Robert's got a licensed drone pilot and already has a drone that has the camera requirements necessary for the project. So we'll fly on a routine interval, maybe quarterly, maybe every other month, to update the imagery for the project. And then Mark, feel free to jump in. But now that you have the point cloud and the drone imagery and you drop in the BIM model, you can start to look at the project in different ways.
Right, the point cloud's overlaid with the BIM model, and you have a schedule below. So you can zoom in, you can use the opacity, so you can take off some of the point cloud to see clearly the BIM, and then go back and forth to look to see what's happened. You can also use the scale on the timeline below to see historical, how it went according to schedule, and then where it's going to be. So here we have, this is how it is linked together. We have schedule below, and on the left-hand upper column up there, that is the BIM elements. So we link the schedule activities to the BIM element, and you can see how it all works together, how it all interlaces there.
You can also look at things on the critical path, right, where you're looking at individual items.
Right, so this calculates negative float, so you can see what's critical, what's started, what hasn't started, and you're looking at individual BIM model up top there.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the term negative float, it's not a positive in a construction project. You want to build float so that you're done out in advance of when the schedule is due, or that item is due. And then Mark talked about the time scale. These are actually indicating drone flights, right? When you had imagery in the
Yellow
drone
dots
flights.
are on the timeline when the drone has been flown, so you can see all your imagery when it's been captured. The blue line below is the actual date, and you can scroll backwards in time or forward, and you can look at how the model's coming together.
Yeah, really, I think the time element of that's really important, because you can look ahead and see not just what's coming at you for planning purposes, but where should I be at different points in time as I move the project forward. So anyway, it's a tool that I think is really emerging in the industry. It's going to be one that we pilot here. We're piloting it on 2 other projects right now. So we hope it gives you lots of valuable data. And in particular, it'll get your staff used to working in that kind of element, which will be, I think, a positive as they move forward with the project and move into operations. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about is workforce development. So here is the graph showing what we expect workforce on the project site to be over the duration of the construction project. You have a peak on-site workforce prediction of 350 people that occurs in the middle of 2022. But you can see, and really what we're talking about today, the value of this project is not necessarily that peak, but what a long duration you have a significant number of folks on the site doing. So you have a lot of opportunity for companies to work on the project and to have folks on the individual site. As we think about that opportunity and then how can we prepare for that, WIFIA loan actually provides good and ample opportunity to do that, because EPA is going to review your loan package for the next 12 months. It gives us time to plan. There's been some discussion if the city wants to move forward with an early works package to get the site ready for the majority of construction. That's okay too. Still lots of opportunity to plan and get ready for the site. Some of what we're thinking about as we move forward is what kind of workforce programs we can implement. So this is not our program. This is a program the city of Wichita has, I believe with Spirit right now, which is Wichita Promise program that's providing job training opportunities related to the aerospace industry. In this particular program, I believe it's about 8 to 10 weeks in duration and about $2,500 to make it through the program, of which the city contributes, the individual contributes, and the employer contributes to help facilitate that. I think there's a great opportunity to do a similar type of program on this project to introduce construction opportunities for a workforce that may have not been exposed to construction previously. So this is one thing we want to look at, and how could we develop that program. We've talked to WSU Tech about their general carpentry program. It's a little longer. It's 16 weeks in duration, and it's about $4,600 for the program. But one of the commitments that you will have for us coming out of this program is that we will fund scholarship program to allow folks to go through that process. We'll also supplement the program so that it becomes more than just a general carpentry class. It becomes really an introduction to construction, so that participants understand not just basic construction elements, but also what the differences are for an electrical contractor versus a mechanical contractor, as an example, and they can think about what that might mean as a career choice. There's also a great opportunity, I think, to back end or do something on the back end of this program, which is to support WSU Tech's new construction apprentice program that rolls out in January of this year. So if you're not familiar with that program, it's our understanding that's a 2-year-long program. It's a $10,000 educational component that's paid for by the employers that hire the apprentice. And students go 1 week to school, and then 3 weeks are out on the job site, and they do that for 4 semesters. As they go forward, so it's a longer duration project. We like that because it really, at the end of it, you are through the apprenticeship program, and you've been embedded in the construction industry long enough that you're probably going to stick in the construction industry as you go forward. So what we want to do here is try to help encourage contractors that are working on this project to access this program. So we'll be looking at a scholarship program to help cover this $10,000 front-end investment those contractors have to make if they want to hire somebody into that program or that's coming from that program. So I think a great way to extend what you might do for a semester or an early introduction into construction, then to actually train them through development and through an apprenticeship program. The final thing we might talk about, Tracy's going to come up and chat with. And Tracy, I mentioned, I think as we went through, Tracy's the former head of the Kansas Water Office here in the state of Kansas, and we want to talk a little bit about the opportunity to train your workforce for this project in operations. Go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon. One of the things I understood very well in my time at the Kansas Water Office was the need to make sure our wastewater and water treatment plants were adequately staffed with certified individuals. And when you think about public servants and the important ones, I dare you to find somebody more important than the person that's running our water treatment plant. They're there 24/7, and we rely on them every day. multiple times a day. So when you really think about public service and where we need to really put an emphasis, I would put the water treatment plant operator up against anybody. That said, we're going to have a shortage of these individuals, not only here in Wichita as we try to staff the Northwest treatment plant, but it's also a statewide issue. It's also a national issue to make sure that we have adequately trained individuals to operate these facilities. I'd like to think we're fixing our aging infrastructure, and we're also going to address our aging workforce a little bit. And what I mean by that is the baby boomers are retiring, and we're having difficulty replacing them in some places. And so this project presents a golden opportunity for Wichita and us to work in collaboration with a lot of organizations that do this for a living. Katie Miller was introduced earlier from KMU. That's what she does. She's responsible for training statewide. Kansas Rural Water Association is involved. State of Kansas is involved. KDHE sets the requirements for the certification. So we think there's a great opportunity to take this facility and develop a state-of-the-art training program that would use local talent. We can look to WSU and other institutions, but certainly some of the other statewide organizations like the League of Municipalities, Rural Water Association, again, KMU. I think we can put together a program here that will utilize the treatment plant as kind of the training ground for not only what we need here in Wichita, but for the state of Kansas and perhaps regionally.
Yeah, I really think that part of the certification process of becoming an operator is you have to have in-plant experience. And I think the connection here for the city of Wichita is that you have facilities that can provide that in-plant experience that is so critical as part of it. And you're located such in the region that you can really provide that not just for what you need here, but as you can train and push individuals to other locations as well, and really become a regional hub in this area. It's you know, if you think about this new water plant, you have an existing water plant that's operating every day, every hour of every day. You're going to build a new plant to do exactly the same thing, but they both got to operate right up to the point that they're not operated anymore, and right up to the point that they start operating. So getting ready for that transition and having your workforce prepared, because you're going to have a plant that has new technology in it, more advanced electronics in it. So we'll be thinking about how do we train a maintenance staff, how do we train an operator staff, how do we really help prepare you to be successful when this new plant comes online, and get yourself in a position where you'll be successful for many years to come. So our commitment here is we're going to help facilitate development of this program. We'll do that in 2020. We've still got a ways before we need operators, so we've got a great opportunity to pull organizations like KMU or KDHE or LKM in as part of that team, folks, and they're all interested in this initiative because, or in this challenge, because this is certainly something that everybody in the state of Kansas and really around the nation is focused on thinking about how do we solve it. Okay, so any questions related to that section? I didn't give you a chance to ask any questions related to the technology. I'll back up and do that as well. Any questions? Okay, so we talked about the opportunity to communicate better and in new and better ways. We talked about the opportunity to build capacity in your supplier network, utilizing technology and developing a workforce. That is our presentation today. I'm happy to take any general questions you have as well. I know we'll talk about next steps. After you have any questions that I might answer. Anything? Okay, Alan, you want to talk about next steps?
Yeah, thank you, Ron. We're closing in here on an important milestone, which is to get a final price and also to submit our application to WIFIA. WIFIA is a very important part of our financing strategy for making this project happen. And we have until the end of this month to get that application, and we're planning on doing it the 29th, the day before it's due. And that'll be right after we get some information, some pricing information from the team, and then staff will take some time to take a look at that pricing information, review it, and be able to pass it forward as having been reviewed and numbers that we can rely on. So what we're talking about is, coming up next is On October 28th, we'll get the price from the team, the design team. Right after that, we'll be submitting our application to WIFIA. Then following that, some period of time, staff will review that information with the idea that we'll have another steering committee on November 19, and we'll be bringing that information back. And then finally, we're going to have a workshop on November 26, and that's an important date because we'll be tying this all together, and we'll really be presenting to council the information not only about the treatment plant and the price, but also proposed rates that will help us be able to finance this, and a status report on the application to WIFIA. So it's exciting. We're starting to get right up here towards the next important steps, and we're on track, and so we can speak with some level of confidence that this is going to actually happen. So stay tuned. We got some exciting things coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. That is our presentation. Any final questions that you need from me, and I will step to the side.
Can you talk about the value engineering you've done the last 2 weeks as we move to the final GMP or the next GMP?
Absolutely. So last steering committee, when we were here, we talked about the price that you will be receiving from our team on Monday of next week will be at or below your budgetary numbers. $508 million, I believe, is the number that we presented last week. We also said there was $20 million approximately of additional value engineering that the city was looking at as potential to take into account in the project. Alan's probably a better person to answer questions related to that. We've provided information. We're working with the city to see what of that can be included. I think it's important to recognize that just because it's been identified doesn't mean you want to take all of that value engineering. You want to take the elements of the design or the recommendations that make sense for you, that provide you or enhance value to the project, and then also save money. So Alan, anything you want to cover that I didn't?
Well, what I can say is there was some question about extending the contract, and I think that the reason why we wanted to do that was to give us some extra time to look at some of these potential savings opportunities, and that is exactly what's been going on in this period of time. The team has identified some pretty interesting and attractive savings, and we're evaluating those right now, but we wouldn't have the opportunities that we have unless we had taken a little extra time to do some more value-added engineering.
Yeah, so our hope, we've provided information to the city. We're working with the city daily to help understand that information. Our hope and our goal is that hopefully that can be looked at and included in our final price that comes to the city on Monday. At least that's our target right now. Other questions? I will step to the side and turn it back over to Alan or the committee.
Okay. Well, really, the committee is to meet and provide us initially with some guidance, and we did that. That really helped us have a better understanding for the project itself. And then you sent us away with some direction and some guidance, and we incorporated some suggestions into our design, and that has happened. Now, the last couple of meetings, we come back to offer you a status report, an update on what we've been doing. So I think this meeting was the look forward to what's yet to come. The last meeting was kind of what had happened up until that point. So at this point, I think we've pretty much given you the information that gets us to the up to date. And like I say, there's some important milestones will be coming up, that guaranteed maximum price and that submittal to WIFIA, the application. And then finally, after staff reviews, the actual best and final offer. So those are important milestones coming up. So with that, any direction, any questions from the steering committee?
I just would like to say that I appreciate the depth that you're going through some of the concerns we had about communication and making sure that we're telling our community what's happening with this project and how we're proceeding, and the deep dive we're doing on this. That this is not something that has come up overnight. We've been working on this for a long time, and it's going to take a lot of communication and education with our community. So I appreciate all those channels and the constant effort with that. I know Councilmember Johnson was sick, and that's why he wasn't here today, but going through the the DBE and the EB opportunities was something that's very important to him, as well as all of us on the council. But I know that's what he addressed last time. And having these opportunities for our local companies to have a piece of this and to get involved with it and be integrated into it is fantastic. And then finally, the training opportunities. I know that was a concern of mine, being able to take a state-of-the-art plant versus what we have now, and making sure that we're have a workforce that will be operated now and into the future. So having that piece of it is very important as well. So I appreciate the depth that you went through on this.
Yeah. I might add to, I didn't mention in the presentation, but with respect to some of those training programs, those aren't included in our price to the city. We don't expect the city to pay for those things. We don't expect the ratepayers to pay for those things. Those are things our businesses believe are important and add value to the project as a whole. So I think just important to note that the costs associated with scholarships and with workforce developments are all things that are going to be paid for by our individual companies as part of our commitment and our being part of the project.
Anybody else? Cool.
Well,
Thank you.
if there's nothing else, then thank you so much, steering committee. And I know we'll have some of our technical people here available to answer any last minute questions you might come up with. And committee meeting's adjourned.
Awesome. Excellent. So you just can't Google everything?